Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck, and more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Cristie Cerniglia. And Cristie is a certified Laura Doyle relationship coach and a ridiculously happy wife after 30 years of marriage. She's mama of four and Kiki to three. She is passionate about helping women rewind their relationships back to the fun and the romance of dating, with or without their husband's efforts. Cristie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Karen. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. And I'm excited because you represent the yin to my yang, okay? Whereas I work with a lot of people whose marriages are, at the end of their useful life, so to speak, and things are going down the toilet, but yet you now have a 30-year marriage and work with people on more on the marriage end of it and staying married. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because a lot of my clients will ask, it's like, how do I know if there's any hope? What can I do? And I think you might have answers to some of those questions. But before we start with all of that, I'd love to hear your story. You've been married 30 years. Has everything all been sunshine and kittens? Start wherever you want to start.
Just perfect from the very beginning. Never a problem or a challenge of any sort.
That's great.
I'm a unicorn. No, my husband and I met. I was in college and he sold me tires at the tire store. So my mom takes credit for the whole thing. She's the one who sent me to that particular tire store. And of course, this was back in the day when we had to write a check. And he said, "I'm going to need your phone number on that check." That was the line that he used to get my phone number.
That's actually pretty brilliant. That's very creative. So
Yes.
he gets points for that.
Yes, yes. And so, um, yeah, at that point, listen, when I was a senior in high school, my parents divorced suddenly out of the blue. They had to be apart for a time while my dad went to start a new job. My mom stayed back, finished up the school year with me, and sold the house. When we got there after 3 months, the summertime he had been there was something not right. And later we discovered that he had gotten involved with another woman. And so this perfect beaver cleaver, household, people would tease us literally about being so, perfect looking on the outside. And my parents truly were happy in their marriage, but there was a breakdown. And all at once, the Christmas time, my junior year of high school, my dad said he was leaving. And my mom and I were just devastated. My brother was away at college. It was a terrible, painful time. And so by the time I meet my husband, I've already declared to everyone who will listen that I am never getting married and that I am going to go to college, get my degree, make lots of money, and never depend on a man for anything.
How did that work for you?
No, the Lord had really different plans for me. So, yeah, because my mom had never worked. And so when my dad left, she didn't know how to get us a place to live. She didn't know how to pay the bills. She didn't know, I mean, we were really in a hard place. And so I saw all of that and it impacted me. And I thought, I never want that to happen. They had been married for 21 years. I said, why would I get married so that a man, after 21 years, can leave me high and dry with these kids and run off with someone else? I just thought, I want no part of that. And so I went on about my way. But you know what? When I met my husband, there was just something different and something special and something clicked. And I was like, I've got to have him.
It sounds like he felt the same way about you.
Yeah, he did. And so we did get married, and my family was surprised because they all really liked him too. So they were surprised that I had done it, and they were surprised I made a good choice, I think. And so, yeah, and it was tricky right away because and I'm sure you are familiar that men and women are really, really different. And so we had different ways of doing things, and we had different levels of cleanliness in the house, right? And we had different versions of how to clean the house, and just all of those things of living together were really tricky at first. And I did a lot of criticizing, and I did a lot of going back behind him and redoing what he had done. And that doesn't go over real big. And so he flat out told me, he said, listen, I'm going to do it my way. And if you don't like my way, then you can do everything. And I was like, oh no, 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 I don't want that. So I had to learn to tone it down a little bit.
Wow. And you know what though? Good for him for saying that. At least he made it known to you that he didn't like what you were doing. You didn't appreciate it. And what I have found in working with a lot of clients, what happens, the marriage starts to break down when they're not honest with each other, when they don't have the courage to say, I don't like what you're doing. Let's talk about it, or please stop, or you can do it, whatever the conversation is, but to have a conversation and to say, honestly, this is how I feel. So many people are afraid to do that.
Yes, and that was my experience growing up, is that everything was good, 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 and then he was gone. And initially, we didn't know there was another woman. And I really resented that someone would leave without saying, here's the things I'm unhappy about. Let's see if we can make some changes. And so I had always told my husband, I said, we need to be open about what's going well and what's not going well. Because if there are changes that need to be made, I want to make them. I want us to not just stay married. And that's what I tell my clients. I don't just want you to stay married so you can say, oh, we did it. I want you to thrive and enjoy your marriage. And there are things that we can do differently that can help that process along.
Well, let's talk about that because, so you started out, things were a little rocky. Sounds like you got them on level ground, but like any other couple, I would assume that you've had your ups and downs over the years. You've learned a thing or two. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the down times and the mistakes you've seen your clients make and how you help them turn things around.
Yeah, there's so many things where to start. But you know what? Here's the thing, no one has ever taught us how to be successful in love and marriage. So we shouldn't really be surprised when we have struggles, because we get taught different things about other areas of life, right? We're busy practicing geometry when we probably should be talking about the skills of love and marriage, because there are some, and I didn't know them. I did not find these skills until 3 years ago. So I've been married 27 years, and I was doing a lot of things wrong. And I'm thankful that I have a husband who's patient and long suffering and loving, and certainly has his own set of faults, right? But what I have found is that when I began to look at myself and make some changes in me, he really started responding to me differently. And I began to get a lot of the things that I had been wanting from him, but I was going about it in the wrong way.
Well, let's talk about that. Can you make this a little bit more concrete? Like
Yeah.
what did you find that you were doing in your marriage that ended up being counterproductive and being the opposite of what you needed to do to get what you wanted?
Yes, a lot. Most of the women who come to me, one of their complaints is that their husbands are always gone. They're either overworking, or they're playing video games, or they're out with the guys, they're playing golf, whatever. They're gone and they're not around. And the women feel lonely and they want their partner, right? And I had that with my husband. And my husband's thing was TV. He loved to sit in front of the television. And I'm like, you know? And so I resented that, and I complained about it a lot. Now, if you had asked me, Cristie, are you a complainer? I would have said no. If you had asked me, Cristie, are you a respectful wife? I would have said yes. I respect my husband very much. But I was not showing up as a respectful wife. And I was doing a lot of complaining that was kind of going under the radar, and it was kind of my blind spot. I didn't know that's what was happening. And that's where coaching is so helpful, where my coach was able to come along and say, do you see this? Do you hear this? How do you think this came across to him? One of the areas that I complained a lot about was my car. We would take my car on the weekends and taking the kids to soccer games and basketball and all of the events, right? And by the time Sunday rolled around, my car was trashed. And I'm a neat freak. I like things neat. So there was water bottles and there was wrappers and there was fast food and all of this business. And so on the way home from church, I would give what I considered a motivational speech, right? And it went something like this. Everybody needs to get their crap out of my car. I'm sick of cleaning up after you guys. Get your stuff and get it out, you know? Well,
I
can
love
you,
that motivational speech.
uh, and you'll be shocked to find out that no one was motivated. Everyone just scattered. And it was like, oh, mom's in a mood. Get away from mom, right? I had that effect on people. And what I found when I started getting coaching and learning these 6 intimacy skills is that I could express my desire in a way that inspires. And so underneath my complaint that my car was dirty was a desire. And the desire was a clean car. And so the way I did it was I just simply said, I would love a clean car. That's all I had to say. And you know what my husband said?
Huh.
I'll take it and get it cleaned right now. It was that simple. He so much, and this is what I find, husbands want their wives to be happy. And all they need is just a little bit of information on how to do that. And they don't get that information from my complaining. All they hear is blah, 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 and all they want to do is retreat and avoid and get away from all of that, right? And that's what
Yep.
was happening. But when I told him I'd love to have a clean car, and I let go of how that happened, maybe he was going to clean it. Maybe he was going to pay one of the kids to clean it. Maybe he was going to take it to get it cleaned. That's none of my business. The fact is, when he heard how to make me happy, he took the car and got it cleaned. Well, I made another mistake, Karen. I'm full of mistakes, and you can learn from
Aren't we all?
my mistakes. When he came back from getting the car cleaned, I thought, I'm going to show up with gratitude, right? That's a good thing. So I
Yeah.
run out to the car and I open up the door and I'm like, thank you so much for getting my car cleaned. And then I notice there's still some stuff on the rug.
Oh
So I start picking it
no.
out. They didn't get this, they didn't get that, right? I look up at my husband and he's like this.
He was crushed.
Yeah, I think that I am complaining against these workers and that they didn't do a good job. My husband is receiving it as, what does this woman want? Is she ever going to be happy? Can I do anything right?
I can't begin to tell you the number of, because I work with men and women, right? And the number of guys I have worked with who have said exactly that. I can't do anything right. I can never make her happy. I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do.
And that's the key, right? All they want is to make her happy. When their wife is happy, the man feels successful. He's doing his job well as a husband. When the wife is not happy, he is down in the dumps. He feels like a failure as a man. He's not able to go out in the world and do all that he's been created to do. When women get coaching and they learn these skills, I find so many of them, their husbands begin to make more money. Their husbands begin to get promotions and things. They get that fulfillment and that confidence from home. They see their wives happy. They think, I got it. I'm doing this thing. And they go out and do more. And I've seen that with my own husband. It's amazing, the ripple effect.
That is so interesting. So one of the things that step number one that you talk about is not to, and I would put criticizing in the same category as complaining. I don't know, maybe its own separate thing, but not criticize and complain, but make your needs known in a positive way. Would that be a good way to reframe it?
Yeah, and all you have to do is say, I would love and then fill in your end result, right? I would love, and just fill in the end result. And so if I said I would love some new boots, I can't say then they're at Macy's in the third row from the left. They're on sale tomorrow, so you have to be there between 4 and 8 and blah, 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 right? I just get to say, I would love some new boots, right? Because when I add all the other things on, then I'm getting into that controlling. And that was one of the other big mistakes that I was making. I was doing a lot of controlling, but I didn't know. I didn't know. I had something to say about everything here. Where we went to eat, how the kids were dressed, what my husband wore, what he did with his free time. I had a list of things I wanted him to do with his free time. Well, who enjoys that?
That's true. That's a very, very good point.
Lots of controlling.
So, what should some woman do? Because I would expect that if I would have met you years ago when you were in controlling mode, you would have denied it, right? You
Yeah.
said, I'm not controlling. What are you talking about, right?
Yes.
Um, so if someone is out there listening or watching, how do you have a tool that they could use or something that they could use to try to figure out in their own behavior, are they being more controlling than they think they are?
Yeah. Oh, I have a great question that I would ask them. Are you smarter than your husband?
That's interesting. Now, why that question?
Because I think that that's our tendency as women is we meet them, we fall in love with them, we think they hung the moon. Then we start to live with them and we see the way they do things and we're like, this guy's a total idiot, right? Because he doesn't load the dishwasher right. He doesn't hang up the clothes the way we want him to. He doesn't, right? So we're just losing respect minute by minute. And we start to think, I really am the superior adult in this household. If I don't tell him how to do it, he's going to do it wrong. And the whole dynamic shifts, and it's a recipe for disaster, and we
Yeah.
don't recognize it.
That's so interesting you said that. I read random fact here. Somewhere, I don't know if I heard it on a podcast or read it somewhere, somebody did a study, which makes me wonder, like, who funds these things? But someone did a study on dishwashing and found out that there is something like 104 different ways to wash the dishes, all of which result in clean dishes, but all of which are very, very different. And we all have a tendency as humans to think that our way, in other words, the way we've been taught to do it, ours is the right way
Yeah,
and everybody else is wrong.
so true. So
So, how do you start to see that in your own behavior? Okay, you can ask, am I smarter than my husband? What else can you do? Is there a way you can start to see what you're doing? Because everybody sees what the husband is doing, they see what their partner is doing, but they can't, it's like you can't hold the mirror to yourself. You're too in the forest to see the trees.
yeah,
So, are there any other things that they could look for in their own behavior
yeah.
that might tip them off?
Coaching is really helpful for helping you to see the things that you can't see, obviously. But on your own, I mean, if your marriage is in trouble, if you feel that your husband is avoiding you, some of these things could be true. And it certainly won't hurt anything to experiment with the things that I'm talking about today. But one of the things that I think would be really helpful to all the people who are listening is it's really easy for us to focus on the negative, right? It's really easy for me to focus on what my husband isn't doing or what I wish he was doing that he's not doing. Okay. And as long as I do that, that issue is just going to grow and expand, right? But when I take my eyes off of that for a minute and move over here and think about what are all the things I love about him? Why did I fall in love with him in the first place? What does he do today that makes my life easier? And you know what? When I start with new clients, there's many times that they are in a struggle to find those things. And we have to go real small, like, does he mow the lawn? Does he take out the trash? Does he go to work? You know what I mean? But if he drives your kids to soccer practice, that's something that's helpful in your life that you don't have to do. We really need to focus on what we want to grow, which is the positive. So what I found myself is that I was missing a lot of ways that my husband was loving me, but it wasn't what I had in mind. So I just disregarded it, right? He would take my car and fill it up with gas. And I, okay, whatever. I didn't say anything. I didn't feel anything. Now, when my husband takes my car and fills it up with gas, I go, oh, that's love. That's him taking care of me. That's him loving me. I want to receive that so that I don't feel that lonely and unloved feeling that I used to feel. I want to receive it, and I want to show up with gratitude and recognize what he's doing. Thank you so much for doing that. I feel so taken care of when you fill my tank up with gas, especially when there's snow outside like there is now. So I really want to look at the good and the positive, and I want to recognize it and build it up, not only in my husband, in my kids, in my grandkids, in my friends, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody want to be recognized for what they're contributing?
100%. And I think that you've hit on something that's so very important. It's the recognition part. Not that we need public recognition, not that somebody's doing something just so that you can say, "Oh, you're such a good person," because if it's not honest and if it's not genuine, it rings false.
Right.
And that could be more harmful to the relationship. But I've just noticed how much farther you get just by saying thank you. Thank you for doing this thing instead of, well, of course you're doing that. You're my husband. You're supposed to do that.
Exactly. And my husband would clean up the kitchen, and I would say, I'm glad you cleaned up the kitchen, but next time, can you wipe off the counters too?
Ooh, ouch.
And I would have called that helpful. So that's another question that we could ask wives. Do you find yourself being helpful and teaching your husband things? Like, honey, this is the way we do this. This is the way. Ugh. you know and I found when my kids were little, my kids are big now, but when they were little, my oldest daughter would say things to my husband like, that's not the way mommy does it. Mommy does it like this. And I go, oh. I would hear things like that and go, oh, she thinks my way is the only way. I need to teach her that, yes, daddy does it different, and it's good too.
Yeah,
We can
100%.
be different. I'm glad we're different, right? If we were
Yeah.
the same, what would that be? And what I find is that when I show up as my feminine self, it causes him to show up in his really masculine self. And guess what? That's like a magnet that is drawn together. We
Yeah.
don't want to be the same.
They say opposites attract, and usually people take that to mean something different. But there's such a thing of polarity, right? And the male and female energy, when they are polarized in a good way, not in the way that so many things are polarized today, but when you've got that difference in energy, that's what causes the attraction and makes it grow. But when you talk about, I'm curious, when you talk about being in your feminine, what does that mean to you? Because I think right now the conversation around feminine, masculine, men, women, like it's all gotten kind of crazy in so many different ways. So I'm interested in, what does being feminine mean to you, and why would you want to do that?
Uh-huh. It is confusing now, isn't it? And when we first started talking about this, even in coach training, I was like, I really have to think about this because it's different than it used to be, but it's still real. And one of the things that I teach about femininity is receiving. So I am able to receive compliments, I'm able to receive help, and I'm able to receive gifts. And I used to not be good at any of those, really. So, compliments. Have you ever, maybe you've seen this or experienced it, right? Somebody says, oh, Cristie, I love your hair. And I go, oh gosh, I haven't washed it in a week, you know? Or somebody says, I like your sweater. And I go, oh, I got this at Walmart for $1.99.
Yeah.
Like, why am I pushing the compliments away? I need to receive those and take those in and believe those and say thank you. All I have to do is say thank you. And
Yep.
that makes me, that's a feminine quality. Okay. So when the grocery person asks me if I want help out to my car, what do we say? Oh, no, I've got it.
Exactly. Every single time.
I'm strong and capable. I am woman, hear me roar. Why? Why would I not accept the help? Sure, I would love it. You know?
Hmm.
Why, and from my husband too, he wants to help me with something. Why do I have to prove some kind of capability? I want to show up feminine, and I love when he takes care of me. So I'm going to say thank you. And when he gives me gifts, my husband used to buy me flowers. Every date that we went on for like the first year, he would stop at the gas station and buy a rose and bring it to me. And that was so lovely. But you know what? After we got married, I started worrying about money, and I started wanting to be frugal. And I would say, those flowers cost this much money, and we could have done this or that with it, right? So guess what? I stopped getting flowers. I stopped getting a lot of different gifts. Women tell me all the time that they don't even get Christmas gifts from their husbands anymore because they have returned or criticized so many gifts that their husbands are afraid they don't even they feel helpless to even buy them anything. My husband bought me a purse a while back. I have started receiving gifts again because I'm a good receiver now. And he bought me a purse, and it wasn't exactly what I would have bought. It wasn't what I had in mind. But I was determined to be a good receiver. I said, thank you. I began to carry the purse. And guess what? I've gotten more compliments on that purse. And so I found that it gives me an opportunity to step outside of my norm. And of course, I always pick out the same purse time after time after time. Now I have something really new and interesting, and it's from my husband. And he loves me to buy it for me. So I'm going to just take all of that in. And all of those things, I think, cause us to show up feminine and beautiful and allow him to feel like my hero and like he's in his masculine.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. I mean, especially in the world today, there seems to be a big push for women to be strong, women to be in their masculine side. And all of us, to be clear, all of us have both masculine and feminine
Yes.
energy in us, right?
Mhm.
It's just a question of which one you allow to be dominant. So isn't the what you're talking about women doing, doesn't that make women lower or put them down or strip away their power? I mean, this sounds like the 1950s housewife, and isn't that a bad thing?
Yeah. Oh, I can see people where people would say that. But you know what? I'm capable. I can open my own door. I can fill up my own gas tank. It's not that I can't do it, but I don't have to. And it makes me feel special and loved and cared for. And he likes to do it for me. I just think it's a wonderful gift to receive. And yet, I still have my capability. So, a lot of the women we're talking to today are probably have really important jobs. And they may walk into their job and they may put on their masculine hat and lead the company, okay? But what I'm suggesting is that when they come home, that they take that hat off and replace it with this soft, feminine wife and mom hat that is different than how she showed up to be the boss at work. Because I know for me, I did high powered work for a time, and then I stayed home for 20 years and mothered kids, and I homeschooled. And that was a supervisory position, right? I was telling those kids, you do this and you go there and you clean that and all those things. My husband would come home and I would stay in that mode and start bossing him like he was one of the kids. That was not an intimacy builder for my marriage.
No.
I had to learn how to take off that boss dominant hat and be his lover and attract him to me, be attractive, by being feminine and soft.
How does someone do that? Let's say there's someone and there's a woman listening to the podcast and she's struggling in her marriage and she can start to see, or she's curious, because
Mhm.
really all it takes is the ability to be open and curious
Yeah.
and say, well, maybe I'm doing that and I don't realize it. How do you have any tips for how she can start to take off that hat? Because a lot of us, like,
Yeah.
I've worked, I've had a career my entire life, and you get to the point where you have to show up and be in charge or you don't get anything done, right?
Mhm.
So when a woman is used to doing that all day, how
Mhm.
does she just flip the switch when she walks in the door to show up differently?
Hmm. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? And like any new skill, it takes practice. And I mean, I still mess up doing these skills. The great news is I know how to clean up my mess now. I'm able to apologize now. Do you know? I don't know how, if I apologized for the first 25 years of marriage. I mean, I was off, I was like the Fonz. I couldn't even say the words. I'm sorry, you know? Um, so I know how to clean things up now. I know how to apologize. But one of the ways that, one of the things I usually start off with my clients on is talking about self care. Because so many of us as women have we give, take care of
Yep,
everybody, take care of everybody. And by the end of the day, we're frazzled, we're grumpy, we're overwhelmed, right? And who can blame us? Because we've done everything. One
right.
of the reasons we did everything is because nobody else could do it the way we wanted it done. And so we need to do some things that make us happy. So whether that, and when you say self-care to women, a lot of times they think, oh, you mean I have to go out and get a $150 massage? No, no. What makes you happy? Do you like to read mysteries? Do you like to go for a walk and listen to a podcast? Do you like to meet a friend for coffee? Do you want to call your sister and just gab it up? Do you want to take a hot bath? You know, there's so many free 5-minute ideas. I want to suggest that you do 3 things every day just for your own happiness.
I
Because
love that.
guess what? I'm going to be a much better wife, mom, businesswoman, everything when I have joy. When I have filled my cup myself. And then
Yeah,
I'm not demanding that my husband make me happy, right? I'm already happy.
yeah. I love that, and I think it's also, I can't remember, I think it was Esther Perel who was talking about how many demands we place on a relationship, on a marriage these days, that
Yes.
back in the day, well, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, you were married and, the woman expected her husband to provide for the family, the man expected the woman to be home and make the home and take care of the kids. And like there were pretty clear roles, but that was it. Today, not only are you expected to do those things and take care of that role, but you've got to be, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, or husband and father. You've got to be the, amazing in the bedroom, your best friends, your constant allies, you're always like there are so many expectations that
Yeah.
are placed on a marriage. And what you're especially asking is that your spouse make you happy. I love that you're saying that's happiness is an inside job.
Mhm. Yes, we created ourselves, and I'm going to take 100% responsibility for my happiness, and then I'm going to let my husband pile on the extra, right? But
Yeah.
it's not his job. I take care of that,
Yeah.
and I love it. And here's the thing, a lot of women who hear from me will say, "Ah, well, why do I have to do everything? You're putting everything on the
Yep.
wife. And what does the husband have to do?" Well, and here's what I say. How many years now have you been waiting for your husband to change this, that, and this, and that, and in order for you to be happy and satisfied in your marriage? And how has that worked for you? It did not work for me. My husband was not changing in the ways that I wanted him to. And I was just continuing to put more and more pressure on him. And I was just getting more and more unhappy. And guess what? If it's all on him, I'm hopeless. I'm just a victim. I'm here and I can't be happy until he changes, and he's not changing. So, where does that leave me? What I'm suggesting to the women is that let's take the power. We are very influential as women. When mama is happy, everybody's happy. So, I want to suggest that you have the power to create the kind of marriage and home atmosphere that you want by making the changes within myself. And like I said, then my husband started to really respond to those changes. And we've got the magnetism back, we've got the fun and playfulness back. That's what characterized. Hey, guess what? I never told my husband what to wear when we were dating. Never. I never controlled him. I never told him, turn here, park there. I never did that. But I did later into our marriage, and it sucked the fun right out, and it sucked
Yeah.
the romance right out. So I don't do that anymore. If he wants to drive a mile out of the way on our way somewhere because he's gotten lost, what do I care? I just relax and enjoy, you know?
Yep, just relax and enjoy the ride.
Yes.
Well, this has been quite a ride. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and what I find refreshing about it, it's a different way of looking at things than what our society in its current state focuses on.
Yes.
We're seeing power from like power is one thing, power as being the masculine power, and women have to take that. But there's a softer power that
Yes.
I think could be just as effective and a whole lot easier for us to manage than trying to do things the man's way.
The skills I teach are really simple. They just take some practice. But when you start, you start to see results right away because it's that mirroring between a husband and wife. And it's just like you and I. If I showed up to the interview today and I was grumpy and sour, things would be very different.
It would be a much, much more tricky interview. Let's
Yeah.
put it that
But when
way.
I show up happy with a smile, you respond happy with a smile, we have fun. So I want to be a good wife mirror, you know?
Yeah, and it sounds like that's a good mom mirror as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I often tell my clients it's like kids learn from what they see, not what you say.
It's
You
true.
can I mean, half the time, especially if they're teenagers, they're not paying any attention to you anyway, but they're paying attention to what you do and they're taking it all in. So the fact that you can show up happy has got to make a huge difference on your kids.
And letting go of control has not only been super helpful in my marriage, but my kids are adults now, and I'm able to relinquish control of their decisions too. They get to make the decisions that are right for them, and they get to make the mistakes. I made mistakes and I learned from them, and now they're making mistakes, and it's okay.
That's beautiful. I'm sure they don't like the consequences of the mistake, but that's the point. And mom just gets to be happy. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. So, Cristie, if someone is listening and they want to learn more from you, they want to work with you, they want to find you, where can they do that? Where's the best place for them to find you?
My coaching business is called Relationships with a Map. And so you can find me, my website at relationshipswithamap.com, or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. And I have a private group for ladies on Facebook that people can join. And I always do a free call up front so we can see if it's a good match, if we're right to work together.
That's beautiful. And for anyone who's listening or watching, everything is going to be linked in the show notes. So you will be able to find Cristie if you're interested. So, Cristie, thank you again so much for sharing your perspective and what you do. And I've just really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Karen. I appreciate it.
And for those of you out there who are watching or who are listening, if you enjoyed today's conversation, if you want to hear more conversations just like this, do me a big favor. Give this podcast, this episode, a thumbs up, like, subscribe to the podcast. It helps more than you know. And I look forward to talking with you again next time.